Hello everyone. These are the instructions for the lab on Monday. Make sure you pay close attention so that everything goes well and that we practice lab safety. The first thing we're going to want to do is make sure that we're properly dressed for this lab. Girls and guys with long hair, make sure you tie back your hair so there's nothing loose because we're going to be using a Bunsen burner. Make sure that there's no jacket looseness on your jacket so that it doesn't ignite. On this lab, because we're working with chemicals that you would cook with, you do not need to wear gloves. In fact, I recommend not wearing gloves because gloves give you a false sense of safety against heat, which is not the case. Nobody wants melted glove on their hand. So I would recommend that you do not wear the gloves. And then again, the apron is not necessary because they're chemicals that we use in the kitchen. So you don't have to worry about your clothing. So do not wear an apron because an apron is just loose, flowing, and you got a Bunsen burner going on here, so I'd rather not have that extra factor involved in that. But do wear goggles. The reason you need goggles is because we're going to be heating up a chemical, and if it's a salt, it can pop out. So it's not that the chemical itself is going to hurt you, but the fact that it's hot. So you need to have goggles on. And make sure you have closed-toed shoes. So it's closed-toed shoes, goggles, and your hair tied back. All the lab safety protocol for the Bunsen burner and using safe chemicals. Now let's take a look at the equipment that you're going to use today. You're going to have a wire gauze. In the end, you're going to set your crucible on this wire gauze because this wire gauze indicates that the thing is hot. Whatever's on it is hot. So you're going to make sure to set your crucible on this wire gauze. You're going to need a spatula. This is in order for you to take the chemical out of the package and put it in your crucible. You're going to need a balance to weigh the mass of everything. You're going to need crucible tongs. Notice the crucible tongs have a little area here. That's so that the crucible sits perfectly on the tongs. In fact, if I go toward the base of the crucible, close the tongs, it gives me a very secure technique so that my crucible doesn't drop or break. So you're going to have the crucible tongs. The crucible sits on this is a little bit warm, because I've been doing a couple of these. The crucible sits on the clay triangle, and the clay triangle sits on the ring that is attached to the ring stand. Ring stand, ring, clay triangle, and burner will be at your table. You're going to be selecting your crucible. Make sure you select a crucible that fits into your clay triangle. And the last thing is the flint. And you guys have used these before, so I will remind you how to use them again. So let's go ahead and start on the procedure. First thing you're going to want to do is weigh your crucible. The reason we never touch the crucible is because there's grease on our fingers. And the grease will get on the porcelain and it will change the weight. And the minute we light the Bunsen burner, then the grease will burn away and the crucible will be lighter than what it's supposed to be. So go ahead and take your balance, zero it, record the mass of the crucible. Because later on, you're going to need that mass in order to calculate how much product was formed. So make sure that you have the mass of the crucible, then zero it, and add about 3 grams of sodium bicarbonate. It doesn't have to be 3.00, but you're going to record how much you added because that will be your initial reactant. And then we're going to do decomposition. So once you've got the mass of the crucible and the mass of the reactant, take it back to the ring stand and put it on the clay triangle, and now it's perfectly secure, and you can begin the decomposition reaction. Begin the reaction by lighting the Bunsen burner. I'm going to just remind you how to do this again. Remember, the Bunsen burner has already been regulated, so never touch the aspirator because it's already been regulated. You're going to make sure that this is closed. You want it closed so that it ignites easily. Then you set it down. The valve is now off because it's perpendicular to the hose. Once it's parallel to the hose, it's on, and then if we go completely the other way, we turn it off again. So this is off, parallel is on. So I'm going to, with one hand, turn my valve to the on position, and then make a spark, okay? And my Bunsen burner should light, and then I'm going to open and allow more air in, which will give me a blue flame. So that's what I'm going for, the blue flame. And then I'm going to set it underneath the crucible and let it heat for about 7 minutes. Now you're not going to see much of a difference in the chemical itself, but something is happening. You might see a little bit of a mist coming off, because remember the products are, one of the products is water and the other product is carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide you're not going to see, but you might see a little bit of the water vapor being given off. After 7 minutes, turn off the gas at the valve. Don't do anything with the Bunsen burner because it's hot, so just leave it alone. Let it sit for about 5 minutes to cool. Then take it off of the clay triangle with your crucible tongs because it's still hot, and set it on your wire gauze. That's to indicate that it's hot. It's not going to look hot, but it is hot. Allow it to cool for several minutes. Don't try to test it with your hand, just let it sit there for about 10 minutes, and then it should be cool. Again, you don't want to touch it because you're going to be adding grease. And take it over to the balance and go ahead and get your mass of the products. Now, again, because this is a decomposition reaction, you're going to lose mass, and that mass is going to go to the air because it's going to be taking the carbon dioxide and the water with it. And you're making sodium carbonate. That's what's going to be left in your crucible. If there's enough time, you can reheat it and do this all over again and make sure that there's no change. But after 7 minutes, you should be finished with this reaction, so you should be okay. Once you've got that recorded, go ahead and write underneath the reaction, write the mass of the initial reactant, right underneath the sodium bicarbonate, and write the mass of the final product under the sodium carbonate on the other side of the equation. So you're going to have the equation, it's going to be balanced, then you're going to have the masses written right underneath each of the chemical species that we're going to be looking at. With that information, you'll then be able to answer the questions for the analysis, and your book is going to be turned in at the